المتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والصلاة والسلام على أسعد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today is our 89th khutbah in the masjid. May Allah accept it from us. The topic is on the weakness of faith, weakness of Iman. Our Iman is not stable according to the most authentic Aqidah of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that the Iman increases and decreases. Your faith increases with good deeds and it decreases with evil acts. When you are engaged in sinning, your Iman gets low. You need to recharge it. This is very important in times like this, when people utter utterances that may likely draw them out of Islam without them knowing. So we need to reactivate and revive our Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recently, a youth came out on social media doubting the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of the judgment in Kano State. You see, this is to say that he is weak. His Iman is weak. His Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the submission we are talking about. When you submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you leave everything to Him. You have faith in Him. You believe in Him. Whatever He does is always right. This is why you must obey Him and obey His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a hadith that the Iman in our interior get worn out, it rusts and deteriorates, just like your cloth, your garments. Your garments get worn out and you need to replace it. So is your Iman. So you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to revive your Iman. In another hadith, he describes the Iman as a moon that is bright, shining. But when cloud comes, it covers the brightness of the moon. And when it is taken away, the brightness comes back. So is your Iman. So we need to revive it and reactivate it. There are signs that will show you that your Iman is weak. One of the signs is that when you engage in sinning continuously and it becomes habitual, you don't feel remorse, you continuously sin. So this is a sign that your Iman is weak. You need to reactivate it. Secondly, when you are not affected, you don't feel affected by the verses and teachings of the glorious Quran. Even if the Quran is played, the Quran is recited, you don't feel affected by the verses. You just feel fed up. And sometimes you even off it and continue your discussion. So you need to know that your Iman is weak. And thirdly, when you feel lazy in obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't feel active in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You come to prayer only when it is completed. You always pray late or combine prayers. You don't care about the congregation. Come into the masjid and pray with congregation. This will show the level of your Iman. You come and pray with your Muslim brothers, and you always target the reward that is involved in praying in congregation. This is another sign of weakness in Iman. And there are reasons for that. Some of the reasons is the environment you live in. You need to know the kind of friends you mingle with. It's very important. الصالحون إذا جالستهم نفعوا بين الوراء وجليس السوء يذيك. When you sit with the righteous people, they always remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you improve in the religion. Secondly, when you abstain from places or gatherings of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the masjid, usually aside the prayers, sometimes you find out that there are lectures ongoing in masjids, so you need to sit yourself and listen. In one way or the other, you increase and improve in your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number three is when you are engaged in incessant hopes, which was our khutbah last week, that you are concerned about the worldly life. You have no preparation for the hereafter. These are some of the things that will lead to weakness in your faith. And then when you do not remember the death and the evil ending, those who do not do righteous acts, they are likely to end up with a bad ending. So when you think of all this, you improve in your iman. But if you don't, then you become weak faith-wise. So there are ways to improve. Some are to become close to the gatherings of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the masajid. You come and listen. If you cannot go to a school to learn the Islamic knowledge, you can acquire it freely in the masjid, just to sit down and listen. And then some of the things is to get friends that are always reminding you, that always remind you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you improve. Number three is that you visit the graveyards. It will remind you of the hereafter, and this will reactivate your iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number four is that you should account for your deeds yourself. You judge yourself before the main judgment. This is also very important. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wal tanzur nafsun ma qaddamat lighadin wattaqullaha innallaha khabirun bima ta'malun. Every soul should look at what it prepares and presents for the hereafter. And we should be mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He is aware of whatever thing we do. This is the summary of the khutbah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen our iman. The Prophet himself sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to ask Allah for a firm iman. Allahumma ya muqallibal qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. This is one of his supplications. You ask Allah to make your feet firm in His own worship, because the hearts are in the fingers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He turned them the way He wishes. So you are likely to deviate. You will not be aware. So you ask Allah for guidance. So we are also reminded to be supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with this type of supplication. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strengthen our iman, and may He guide us aright. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyil kareem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.